Hello everybody and welcome to a spin-off of the Comic Book Chair. We're going to call this Comic Book Chair Variant, or CBV for short. In this version of the Comic Book Chair, I'm going to bring on someone else, and they're going to review a comic book for me. Ergo, I don't have to do any work. Alright, so today I have my first guest on this show. Introduce yourself.
Hi there, I'm Aaron Orenstein. Been a longtime friend of Zeke's. Happy to be here.
Alright, so what is the book you have presented today? What is your tale from the Comic Book Chair?
Well, this one is going to be an older tale than the ones you've reviewed before. I have today an entry in the hardback DC Comics Archive editions. This is the Action Heroes Archives Vol.1. It's a collection of the superhero stories featuring characters that originated at Charlton Comics before DC bought them in the 80s.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so Charlton was this little comic book outfit that formed in Connecticut in the early 50s. And they're basically the equivalent of Roger Corman's film studio. Not exactly Oscar-worthy movies, but at the same time, nothing like Ed Wood level of productions. Like, just entertaining drive-in fare all the way.
That's all. Okay, yeah, so like some B sci-fi stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely came out, I see you got Captain Atom on there. Definitely came out around the big science character boom in comics.
Yeah, the early Silver Age. And yeah, Captain Atom was actually their first foray into superhero stuff, and you may recognize Captain Atom from shows like Justice League Unlimited, Young Justice, maybe as one episode in Batman the Brave and the Bold, or if you were actually adventurous enough, you read the New 52 reboot of Captain Atom. But no, this is the early Captain Atom stories as done by Joe Gill, the writer, and the great Steve Ditko.
Awesome. I love Steve Ditko as an artist.
Yeah, also known as Comicdom's answer to J.D. Salinger.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, so...
you talked about Captain Atom. Are there any other characters, since we've already transitioned to characters, are there any other characters or stories in this book, featured in this book, that you'd like to bring up? Or
Well, in this initial volume, it's just Captain Atom, but we are introduced to another of the Charlton heroes later on. It's Nightshade. And the funny thing I forgot to mention, these characters are the inspirations for the characters of Watchmen. In Captain Atom's case, he's the basis for Dr. Manhattan. And the other character who's introduced is Nightshade, who is the main inspiration for the second Silk Spectre.
Awesome.
But yeah, she doesn't come till later. I mean, this book collects all the solo Captain Atom stories beforehand, from his debut in Space Adventures number 33 from March of 1960, up until the start of his solo series in Captain Atom number 78 in 1965, and that's when they retitled it from Space Adventures to Captain Atom because he got a little popular. They were hoping he'd be the cornerstone of their line.
So he's originally Captain Atom was meant to be their answer to Superman, or their big mascot character.
Almost. I mean, of course, you gotta make sure he's different enough that you don't get sued by DC. We all know what happened to Captain Marvel, aka Shazam.
Yeah, it was just Magic Superman, and they were mad that he was more popular than normal Superman.
Yeah, unfortunately. Captain Atom was mildly popular at the time that he debuted. But yeah, this is one of Steve Ditko's first superhero creations, and this is just before he goes on to Marvel in 1962 to co-create Spider-Man and Doctor Strange with Stan Lee. And that was pretty much it. Charlton was without superheroes for the time being until Stan Lee and Steve Ditko had their infamous falling out. Ditko leaves in 1965, comes back to Charlton, comes back to do Captain Atom. This time, Captain Atom gets his own solo series, more full-length stories, a rogues gallery, supporting characters, well, more than just the two that he had initially. And overall, it's these are actually decent stories for their time if you take them at face value. I mean, it's not anything substantive.
Oh, that sounds more like a verdict thing, so let's wait before we get to that.
Yeah.
So giving me a good synopsis about these Captain Atom stories and why they are important. And we definitely got to know that Captain Atom is the main focus of these books, so the main character, and also we have the Nightshade, the inspiration for the second Silk Spectre.
Yeah.
As well. That is really cool. We're going to move on to the likes and dislike portions of this book. So what are the top 3 things you like about this collected volume of Captain Atom stories?
Well, first off, it's the Steve Ditko artwork. When he isn't alternating with this other artist whose name escapes me, unfortunately, it's a beauty to look at. I mean, early Steve Ditko stuff was really pretty good for its time. This falls right somewhere between the street level stuff he did in the early Spider-Man stories and the more way out there sort of thing you'd see in his Doctor Strange stuff. And it's a really nice piece of artwork. I mean, that was the good thing about artists like Ditko or Jack Kirby. If the story wasn't that serviceable, the art made more than made up for it. I mean, it was just a beauty to look at.
Sort of a precursor to the image comic days.
Yeah, the only difference is Ditko was good with his human faces.
Yeah, and all of his characters seem realistically proportioned.
Yeah, that... Yeah, no kidding.
Not walking brick shit houses and supermodels as they were in the 90s.
Oh, no. It's perfectly straight-laced for its time. And the designs he had for a lot of the aliens that Captain Atom would occasionally fight, in addition to Cold War-level intrigue spies and all.
Yeah.
Interesting, really offbeat designs. I mean, some of the stuff you'd get to see when he'd later do Doctor Strange, or even earlier when he did Gorgo. Yeah, there was a comic based on that particular movie. And a lot of really cool space-agey designs. Captain Atom's early costume is a nice work of art. I mean, it's not like the metal-skinned guy with boots that you see later on. This is
like where he's basically energy filling a humanoid suit. This guy's
It's basically him wearing a special set of chainmail to keep off the radiation that he gives off.
Good old Silver Age science.
Yeah, and that's a good bridge into the second thing I like about this book, the sheer amount of wacky pseudoscience in the stories. I mean,
they don't make them like that anymore.
No kidding. I mean, this stuff wouldn't look out of place in an Irwin Allen TV series from around the time, like Lost in Space, Time Tunnel, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Yeah.
Perfectly entertaining if you're, like, watching a rerun late night, and it depends if you're high or not. Third thing I like about it overall is the whole Cold War undertones they're not so much undertones. They're right in your face. There are a lot. For every story where he fights an intergalactic menace, he spends a story fighting like a communist saboteur or spy trying to kidnap somebody, steal secrets, rewire a bunch of missiles.
Those damn Ruskies.
But not Boris and Natasha kind of funny, I can tell you that.
Yeah, they're more like stereotyped threats, but they're still threats.
Yeah, like, again, Irwin Allen level threats. Also, you don't see a whole lot of the... Ditko is known to be a very staunch objectivist supporter, and you don't see a lot of this early on. This is before he got into reading Ayn Rand and created The Question.
I could definitely... Yeah, The Question totally seems like a reaction to Ayn Rand ideas.
I mean, Ditko's Question, at least, not Denny O'Neill's. But, this is pre-Question Steve Ditko, so we get to see more of his creative juices when they're not mixed in with his objectivist philosophies.
Cool. Yeah. Alright, and, nothing is perfect. There are flaws in everything. What are the top 3 things that you dislike in this book?
I wouldn't say overly dislike. It's just that...
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, like, big dislike. Just some things you went like, maybe they could have done better.
In that regard, taken as a given, a lot of the first stories that you read through here are pretty short. They're like 5 pages long, but... Again, Charlton was a B-level comic book publisher. They didn't have a lot of operating capital for lengthier stories, so they tended to rely on anthologies more. So, if you're reading these shorter stories, they do breeze by a little bit quickly unless you take a moment to look at all this beautiful Steve Ditko art, or that of the alternating artist. You don't pretty much get to the lengthier stories till, page 120, and that's when they start to get longer. Second thing, if you're a reader who likes more substantive characters, lengthier, you don't get a lot of character substance in the shorter stories. You gotta wait till you get to the lengthier issues, and once you get to the lengthier issues, you do get to see a more fleshed out group of villains that he fights, like Dr. Spectro, who may have inspired the Flash villain Rainbow Raider, or in the story where Nightshade debuts, when they debut the Ghost, who may have inspired the Iron Man villain of the same name. I mean, but guaranteed this was years later. But yeah, you're gonna have to wait a while before you get to lengthier stories with a little more character.
Yeah.
And other than that, Ditko art may be a turnoff to some people who... I mean, everybody's got their artistic preferences.
Yeah.
But you just gotta take them at face value. Otherwise, maybe you'll like the alternating artist, maybe you won't. And finally, just you might just not be a fan of the dated nature of most of these stories. You might not be a fan of Cold War intrigue.
Yeah.
I mean, you might want something a little more ethereal. In that case, I recommend Ditko's Doctor Strange. Or if you want something a little more grounded, even more grounded than Captain Atom sort of is, maybe you'll want to turn to another Ditko work, his Spider-Man stuff, or his Blue Beetle. But I would say, unless I'm jumping ahead...
If you want to give your verdict, go ahead, man. Yeah.
Alright, well, overall, I'd give this 3.5 out of 5 if you really want to get a handle on how the major superhero innovations of the Silver Age were implemented, you would really want to check out something like this, especially to see Ditko's earlier work when he was just past all the crime and horror comics and starting to get into the more fantastic, the superheroic.
Yeah.
So this is a good read. And one other recommendation too: try and look for one at a decent price. I got mine at a used bookstore for $14.99 compared to the cover price of $49.95. So yeah, it shouldn't be too hard to find a cheap copy.
Yeah, I'm in the description. I'm going to put a link to Amazon. That may not be the best price, but just to show that support it.
And it'll show.
And if it's on Comixology, that's also good too.
Or if you're a local, if you live in the state of Washington and know how to get to a half price books, you may be lucky. They may have some still in their Mylar wrapping.
Awesome. Aaron, thank you so much for coming on this new version of the comic book chair variant. Thank you for showing us this book. It is the Action Heroes Archived Editions from DC Comics, Captain Atom Archives Volume 1.
Right, and if you can, look for Volume 2 too. It has, in addition to more Captain Atom, you've got Blue Beetle, Early Question, maybe even a Judo Master story or two. And thank you for having me on here. I'd be happy to come on again if you asked me.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, if you got any more ideas, definitely talk to me about it. And also, any of particular people that know me personally, that like comic books, contact me as well, and I too will let you on this show. So yeah, that has been Aaron's Tale from the Comic Book Chair. Next week, I don't know. Bye. You want to say goodbye?
Yeah, this is Aaron Orenstein signing off.